Hello, everyone, and welcome to our latest customer interview from SubQuery. My name is James Bailey. I'm the COO of SubQuery. It's a pleasure to finally talk to you again. It's been a long time since we've done this kind of series of recordings, and we're looking forward to starting them up again. But today I am very proud to present to you a long-time friend of mine and of SubQuery as well, Marvin Tong from Phala. Marvin, thanks for joining us today.
Hey James, hi everyone. This is Marvin. I'm the CEO of HashFreeze, the company backing Phala Network, and also the co-founder of Phala. So yeah, know SubQuery and like friend of James' team, together for a while. And yeah, it's really like nice. Thank you for having me, and it is a pleasure to have a chat.
Marvin, Phala's been one of the longest parachains in Polkadot. Like you've been through Kusama, Polkadot. You're one of the earliest chains to get a slot. For those that don't know what Phala does, which there shouldn't be many of us, what is Phala? What are you guys focused on?
Of course. Phala Network is providing off-chain computation infrastructure to Web3 services. So our goal is that we want to make the EVM smart contract even smarter by providing connections, complexity, computation, logic, and etc. But our key technology is something called confidential computation, which we use to name it like privacy preserving computation. So this is the technology we are using. And Phala Network is the openness, permissionless infrastructure to management all of the off-chain like computation nodes and to make sure it can run, in a trustless way. So this is like the goal and how it works basically for Phala.
Yeah. Yeah, and you guys are working on the big new thing, right? Which is your Phat contract. It's kind of like a more detailed, computationally expensive smart contract. Am I right?
Exactly. So thank you for bringing that up. Phat contract is how you can use, the computation resources running on Phala Network. So it's inspired by like pretty famous, theory in web services called Phat protocol, thin application, and that is the theory name. So it means that so in a trustless world or in Web3 world, the protocol is fatter than application layer. So just welcome to read it anytime. But it gives us the inspiration that we want to expand, the use cases and potential utility for smart contract. We see there's certain limitations of smart contract, which drives smart contract is not that smart. I think many consumers, when they jump into the space, they must have such questionnaire like it is called smart contract, but it's so complicated to use. It's not smart compared with the Web2 service. So we begin to think about why and how we can solve the problem. So the answer is we need to make sure like the smart contract can connect with more like how to say like much more richer space of data resources, data connections, and cross-chain, of course, and super interactivity with customized, programmable features. So when we list, everything like the features that can drive smart contracts smarter, we know like what is the approach to provide the utility of Phala Network, which position as off-chain infrastructure. And this maybe drive us back to the topic like how we can collaborate with SubQuery and what is our leverage into a Polkadot ecosystem and all of the other ecosystem. So 3 years ago, we basically shared exactly the same mission, and this is something we want to do for a long time. And after 3 years, after we launched the parachain, launched the infrastructure, launched the DAO, begin to work on productivity, begin to connect and talk with the potential consumers, we know more clear about how what are the things that Web3 developers need and what are the key features they want to see in the space. So we begin to build features that the dApps on like no matter Polkadot or Ethereum ecosystem or Polygon ecosystem, whatever they need, and we begin to provide services. So this is our like big change for Phala team in this year, and it's glad to see like because we are living on top of Polkadot, so that we can leverage our resources and friendship to, of course, with all of the like talented team such as SubQuery. So this drive us here.
And like, what are the best examples of like, the effort you've gone to with the Phat Contract? Is the work you've done in Phala World, right? You launched that last week, which is an immersive kind of metaverse experience, and that leverages many of the technologies that you build, including some of the SubQuery projects that Phala use.
Yep.
How did SubQuery help you build that?
Okay, thank you. Let me break down a little bit. So, for example, I will just point out maybe two type of like very typical use cases. So the first one is what you mentioned, James, like the dynamic NFT or metaverse perspective, use cases. And we do realize that there are a lot of like on-chain gaming or NFT projects or metaverse projects. Some of them call themselves like gamification projects nowadays. Like their basic like user experience model is that user could log in, in an application or a game, and they begin to work on it, play around it, and they will win something. But during the gaming experience, and whenever they gain some scores, right, the project want to sync up with their scores inside the client into their dynamic NFT as metadata, so that you can see your scores being confirmed, being verified on blockchain. So this is a very, very basic and simple module. So for example, I can name some cases like Step Fund. You can just install it and begin to work and bond it with your NFT, and you can win scores, right? And you can transfer the scores into some token. So there are many like quest-based platform like this. And a very basic fundamental like function is you need to figure out the way that when user gain the scores inside the gaming client, maybe it's just a website, maybe it's a web app or iOS app, doesn't matter. So you need to sync the scores from local client into metadata. Of course, there are so many standard ERC, right? EIP already living on Ethereum for that, right? But the problem is, how can people trust it? You of course can execute a backend, just to calculating the scores and manually or automatically by a centralized scription sync the data into a blockchain by controlling the address. But the problem is the community would ask questions. How do you calculate the scores for James?
Yeah.
For
How do we
Marvin?
trust those scores?
Yeah, that exactly. So the solution we are providing is that because Phala is an off-chain infra, that the programs are running, which is being called the Phat Contract, is verifiable because the security consensus on Phala Network itself, so that you can make sure your subscription running in off-chain can be guaranteed and secured without any evil manipulate. So this is the service we are providing. For example, there is already a bunch of hackathon like level or demo level use cases showing that you can use Phat Contract to automatically sync your gaming client scores into a dynamic NFT on Ethereum or Polygon, and it's very interesting. So there are of course many use cases like this as well, but I will leave the time with you. Yeah.
But it's a self-contained computational, like a virtual machine in a way, a very small one that you can calculate a lot more kind of complex information in.
Yeah.
We've been working for a long time. Phala's done quite a few things, and one of those in the past that we actually powered at SubQuery was the Phala bridge, or I think you call it SubBridge, which is I believe one of the first bridges between Polkadot and Ethereum to transfer assets. And you're just about to release the next version, right, of SubBridge?
Yeah, exactly. We build SubBridge just for Phala community backend, because when we get a line, we don't want to just abandon the ERC20. We think keep connected with Ethereum ecosystem is very important. So we figure out a way that we can connect ERC20 or Ethereum, Kusama parachain and Polkadot parachain, and we keep it, the tokenomics for Phala simple. We don't have 3 tokens, but 1 token. But of course, to complete the job is take us a lot of time. So we have to choose the most practical solution, better, which is SDK provided by ChainSafe team, and we customize it based on our community requests. So that is basically the original version of SubBridge. But one time, comes by, we communicate more and more frequency, with the ChainSafe team, and we came up with an idea that how about we decentralize the solution. First of all, we want to decentralize solution. We want to add a more secured, infra updating on that solution from a SDK into an infrastructure provider. And 3, we also see there are many parachains are struggling on that. There are a lot of bridge claiming that they can do native substrate palette to EVM, bridge solution, but yeah, it's very rough thing for now. There's not so many practical solutions. So we want to provide some services to other parachains as well. So this came with the next version of SubBridge, which is, we call it Sigma Bridge. And but just to be aware that Sigma Bridge is not provided just by Phala team. We are co-building it. We also with the Sigma team, which powered by ChainSafe. So this is more like a ecosystem project. And Phala is one of the, maybe the first parachain who will use it. And it's already live. And we are replacing the original SubBridge bit by bit. So basically, Sigma Bridge will be running as a decentralized infra, which means there will be more nodes, verifying the MPC cross-chain verification process. And it will be more adopted to other parachains as well. But in the meanwhile, we are also thinking about the next version of Sigma Bridge. So we got a direction that we could integrate part of the intent-centric and autonomous experience together to provide Polkadot user a one-click solution. Yeah, I know there's a lot of one-click solution, but the problem is because lacking of liquidity, or the liquidity is divided in all of the parachains, and every parachain got maybe 2 or 3 top decks. So the liquidity just separate into pieces. So Polkadot DeFi user suffers from the liquidity. When you want to just try to sweat KSM into any parachain token on Polkadot. Just try it. You won't find good experience on that. So we want to solve that solution because we already figured out how, and we are exploring more features and ideas on top of it. So but basically we see what Uniswap X is doing. So we want to migrate something with intent-centric technology stacks. So it will be an interesting trial. I'm looking forward on it.
Yeah, and that's one thing I really enjoy about working with Phala is that you both you push the boundaries of what's possible, and you're always kind of working at the forefront of development in Polkadot. So, for example, working with ChainSafe on a very early stage Ethereum bridge that they've been building for a long time, and you're one of the first people to take that up. But also that you also push for decentralization. And that's a key thing that, we also believe it in SubQuery is, and something I'm looking forward to working with you guys on is we've just launched a pre-mainnet of our decentralized network. And we're working on taking real customer projects. So for example, Phala's Chainbridge SubQuery project, and making sure that it works on a decentralized network so that people that, let's say, build a bridge like you guys did, where you need to be able to index transactions on both sides of the bridge, and you need to be able to keep track of the assets moving across the bridge and the volume of the pools on either side. You can run the projects that index that in a decentralized way. And it goes back to what you were saying at the start of this call, Marvin, which was you can run these like computational systems in the back end, but if people can't run them themselves, or if there are multiple people running it, people are going to ask, well, how can I trust this number? How can I trust this calculation that you've given me? And these kind of challenges affect us both.
Yeah, the data accuracy or the proof of like data accuracy is essentially important. Just imagine, like, no matter you are using an Oracle or like a centralized backend to indexing data through some APIs. I mean, in maybe 90% of the cases or situations, things won't happen, right? Because it doesn't affect a lot. But when like there's some extreme situation happens. For example, there's a big MEV potentially lying there. There's a potential for API provider to become evil, or just someone break into that infra and begin to manipulate some numbers. It could cause really serious troubles. So that's why decentralized indexing. I don't want to say decentralized, but more like minimal trust for every session, in the applications is so important. You need to minimal trust the data providing process, like SubQuery is solving that. You need to minimal trust the backend program running in off-chain, which we are trying to replace that. And of course, smart contract and local client, RPC, and Essential. So I can definitely see the decentralized infrastructure is pumping up in that scenario because people already realize how important that is, right? So 3 years ago, 4 years ago, there's no MEV, there's no flashbulb. They exist because after DeFi summer, people see, wow, there are billions of dollars worth of MEV happens every day, and there's a lot of dirty things happening there. We have to, provide minimal trust infra to it. So it's valuable and it's very solid, for the value.
Yeah, and I think we both understand that it's a challenge, but there's no such thing as perfect decentralization. There's always a level down of some choke point, but it's about meaningfully decentralizing and distributing trust of all these different resources in a way that's efficient. Don't let perfection be the enemy of progress.
Decentralization could be done, step by step. So we have to. One thing we learned is that we have to keep a balance between practical or useful and trusted is decentralized. So for example, there are some mistake we made during our last 3 years journey being a parachain. For example, we spend so much time to provide a decentralized computation infra or service. In the beginning, we got 30K number of online workers or computation nodes running every day, every second, but it takes us maybe 2 years of efforts to building that infra to be capable, supporting that number of live nodes. But the problem is, after we spend that time, when we come back into the market, we realize, okay, people think Phala is not providing practical solutions, right? There are very limited use cases, for example, 1 year ago or 15 months ago. So it struck me a lot. And we realized, okay, check out what the best team are doing. For example, maybe the graph team or this and that. There is some clever teams. They are keeping a good balance between provide things like the customers need, the Web3 industry need, and become useful first. But in the meanwhile, they becoming decentralized or trusted step by step. So I think this it's possible to keep the balance. I have to say, SubQuery is doing great on that, and we are trying our best effort to become into that level as well. Yeah,
it's a tough balance, right? And it's one thing I think everyone in this industry loves doing is running off with our heads down, developing and developing and building and building, and then at the end of the day, turning around going, "Are you guys using this?" And people either don't understand or doesn't quite solve the problem, or it misses a constraint that makes it not quite fit for purpose. But it's happened to many teams out there, and I know that it's something that's on both of our minds, I'm sure, Marvin. On that note, I'd like to ask a question that I always like to ask teams, and that is, if you were talking to yourself 5 years ago, and you're trying to give some advice to your younger self, what would you advise them? Someone potentially just starting to jump into crypto or Web3, what would you talk to them about?
it's a very good question. It's really interesting that from 5 years ago, of course, 5 years is too hard because I didn't jump into the industry 5 years ago. But of course, the number one advising would be buy Bitcoin now, right? So, but besides that, it's interesting that when I and Hang, my co-founder, together when we started the shop, nearly 4 years ago. Since then to now, what we want to do have never changed, and our mission never changed. We just see directly, there is a big opportunity in the option scenario, and we want to do something around it. So. In the last 4 years, we might change the strategy or direction of Phala this bit by bit, but we didn't change our mission. And it's also very interesting that we see how experience or connections or your resources can summarize if you insist doing one thing well. So this would be the advice I would give 5 years ago myself, just keep doing one thing well and don't change your goal. Don't be misguided by the noise in crypto, because in crypto there is just 10 more times noise even compared with TikTok. There's so much noises around there. The news, FUD, this and that. So opportunities, right? So check out this, man. Check out that. So there's so many opportunities. But maybe just use 30 minutes per day to review what's happening in the space and keep focusing on what we are doing, just doing one thing well.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, if I transfer back 5 years ago, I would say keep a good balance between being useful and decentralization. Don't invest 90% of your time into decentralization or trust. Just keep a good balance. So I believe we can do better if I got that advice 5 years ago.
Yeah, and that topic of bridges, it always comes back to bridges. We're building a bridge between Web 2 and Web 3, and it's hard to build a bridge when you don't think about how it's going to span those two environments. So always try to find that right balance. I completely agree. You got to find that right balance between systems that are useful today, that are easy to understand, and the systems that are more decentralized or sufficiently decentralized. Marvin, thank you very much for your time. As always, it's a pleasure talking to you, and thanks for joining.
Thank you, James, for having me. It's really a pleasure to collaborate with SubQuery for all of the time.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to what we can announce together soon too as well.